My friend's mom fought at work every day, but the CEO had been secretly in love with her all along.
The first time I realized I was in love with my friend's mother, she was standing in my office telling me I was wrong. Not angry. That would have been easier. She was calm, holding a paper cup of coffee in both hands, looking at the quarterly report on my desk as if it had personally disappointed her. "You cut the community program," she said. "I postponed it." "For how long?" I looked at the spreadsheet again, mostly because looking at her felt like admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. "3 months. She nodded slowly. "That's what people say when they don't want to say canceled." There was a pause. I almost smiled. "Almost." She noticed anyway. "What?" "Nothing." "You're smiling." "I'm not." "You are." I looked down at the report. She folded the edge of her napkin once, then again, making the corners line up perfectly. That was the first thing I noticed about her. Not her eyes, though I would spend far too much time noticing those later. Her hands. She always did something with them when she was trying not to say too much. Her name was Alina, 46, divorced, mother of my closest friend Daniel, and for the past 2 years she had worked in the company I had inherited from my father and taken over as CEO at 27. She had never treated me like the CEO. That was probably the problem. Everyone else knocked before entering my office. Alina didn't. Everyone else watched their words around me. Alina said things like, "That's a terrible idea," and then waited for me to prove her wrong. Sometimes I did. Sometimes I didn't. And every morning, around 8:40, she walked into the small kitchen outside my office with the same black thermos. I started noticing when she wasn't there. That was how it began. Not with some dramatic moment. Just absence. A morning without her voice. A chair left empty. A second cup of coffee I didn't need. I had plenty of people around me. Employees, meetings, investors, friends who sent messages whenever they wanted something. Still, most evenings, my phone stayed face down on the table. There were conversations I started and never finished. Texts I typed to Daniel and deleted because "how's your mom?" sounded strange when I already knew exactly how she was. At least I thought I did. Alina and I argued almost every day. Budget cuts. Hearing decisions. Her department. My decisions. Sometimes she left my office shaking her head. Sometimes I watched her walk down the hallway after she left, then forced myself back to whatever was on my screen. One afternoon she stopped at my door. "You're coming to dinner Friday, right?" I looked up. "Daniel's birthday." "I know. He'll be annoyed if you don't." "I'll come." She nodded. Then she hesitated. "You always say that." "Say what?" "That you'll come." She waited. I didn't answer. Her fingers tightened slightly around the thermos. Then she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Friday then." She walked away. I watched until she disappeared around the corner. That night at 12:17, my phone lit up beside my bed. One message. From Alina. "Can we talk before Friday, just you and me?" I stared at it longer than I should have. Then another message appeared. "And please don't tell Daniel yet." I almost didn't go. For about 10 minutes I stood in my apartment with my phone in my hand, reading Alina's message again. "Please don't tell Daniel yet." That sentence had too many possible meanings. I told myself she probably wanted to talk about work. That was the sensible explanation. It was also the one I wanted to believe. She was waiting in the bookstore near her apartment when I arrived. It was a small place she sometimes used after work, tucked between a pharmacy and a bakery that closed too early. She was sitting at the back with 2 cups of tea. "You came. You asked. I wasn't sure you would." I sat across from her. For a few seconds, neither of us touched the tea. Then she pushed 1 cup toward me. "Chamomile. I usually drink coffee." "I know. That caught me. You remember." She looked down. "You order the same thing every morning." There wasn't anything romantic about that. It shouldn't have mattered. Still, I picked up the cup just to have something to do with my hands. She told me why she had wanted to talk. The community program wasn't just another budget item. She had spent 6 years building it before I became CEO. Her voice stayed even while she explained it. My father used to take me to places like that when I was young, she said. Free classes, cheap meals, someone who knew your name. I looked at her. You don't talk about him much. No. Why? She shrugged. He died before Daniel was born. A pause. I think I got tired of explaining him. That was all. She didn't cry. She didn't look away dramatically. She just rubbed her thumb along the side of the cup. I understood that kind of silence. There were things I hadn't told anyone either. Like how strange it had felt becoming CEO so young. How often I sat alone in my office after everyone left because going home to an empty apartment felt worse. How sometimes I opened my messages just to see if someone had written, even when I already knew nobody had. Elena watched me for a moment. You don't have to look so serious. I am serious. You're 27. So, you look like you're 40. I laughed. She smiled. It was small but real. Then she reached across the table and straightened the crooked lid on my tea. You do this, she said. Do what? Pretend you don't need anyone. I didn't know what to say. Because she was right. And because she was Daniel's mother. That fact seemed to appear between us whenever the conversation got too quiet. She seemed to remember it too. Her hand stopped. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she pulled it back. Sorry. It's okay. No, I shouldn't have. She stopped. I waited. She looked toward the window. Outside, people were walking home under the yellow streetlights. You're his friend, she said quietly. I know. And I'm his mother. I know that too. She nodded. That should have been the end of it. Instead, when we stood to leave, she reached over and brushed a tiny piece of tea paper from my sleeve. Neither of us said anything. Her fingers lingered for barely a second before disappearing. On the way home, I kept thinking about how ordinary it had been. A bookstore. 2 cups of tea. A conversation about work. A hand brushing paper from a sleeve. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone had finally seen the parts of me I had spent years pretending weren't there. After that night, Elena changed the way she came into my office. She knocked. Every time. Even when the door was open. Especially when it was open. Come in, I would say. She would step inside. Place whatever folder she was carrying on my desk and leave before the conversation could become anything else. At first, I told myself I was relieved. Then I started noticing how often I looked toward the door. Daniel noticed before I did. We were having lunch one afternoon when he put his fork down. You two fighting? I looked up. Who? He gave me a tired look. My mom. No. You've barely spoken to her lately. I shrugged. Work's been busy. Since when does my mom being busy make you weird? I laughed once. I'm not weird. You're definitely weird. I reached for my water. He kept watching me. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. She's downstairs. My stomach tightened for no good reason. A minute later, Elena walked into the restaurant. She saw us. Stopped. Then smiled. Not at me. At Daniel. Hi. She leaned down and kissed his cheek. I watched her straighten. She looked at me for half a second. Hello. Hey. That was it. She sat beside Daniel instead of across from me. It shouldn't have mattered. It did. During lunch, she barely looked in my direction. When she finally did, I caught her watching me. Her eyes moved away immediately. I looked down at my plate. Afterward, Daniel left first. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. Elena nodded. Then he pointed at me. Don't let her bully you at work. She smiled. I don't bully him. You absolutely do. The joke was harmless. Still, Elena's fingers tightened around her purse. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. And suddenly the sidewalk felt too quiet. I'll call you later, Daniel said, walking toward his car. Elena watched him go. Then she turned toward me. We should probably keep things simple. I didn't pretend not to understand. Okay. She nodded. Good. Neither of us moved. A bus passed at the end of the street. She looked at me. Then away. I don't want Daniel thinking. He doesn't know anything. I know. Because there's nothing to know. The words came out too quickly. She looked at me. For a moment, something in her face softened. Then she stepped closer. Not much. Just enough that I could smell her perfume beneath the cold afternoon air. You're making this harder, she whispered. I haven't done anything. I know. Her voice almost disappeared. That's the problem. I stopped breathing for a second. She looked at my mouth. Just once. Then back at my eyes. I could have moved. So could she. Neither of us did. Her hand lifted slightly, as if she might touch my arm. Instead, she closed her fingers and let it fall. I should go. Yeah. She took one step. Then turned back. I meant what I said. About what? She hesitated. Keeping things simple. I nodded. She walked away. I watched her disappear into the crowd. That night, I found an unopened message from her waiting on my phone. It had been sent 3 minutes earlier. I almost told you something today. Then another message appeared. Maybe it's better if I don't. The next week, Alina stopped coming to my office. She sent emails instead. Short ones. Approved. Need clarification. Please see attached. Nothing personal. Nothing unnecessary. I told myself that was better. Then, on Thursday evening, I saw her sitting alone on the bench behind the office building. She had her black thermos beside her. I almost kept walking. She looked up. You can sit. So I did. There was a few inches between us. Enough to feel deliberate. For a while, we watched cars move through the parking lot. You've been avoiding me, I said. I've been working. You've been doing that differently. She smiled faintly. You notice too much. I notice you. The smile disappeared. She looked down at her hands. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. I didn't answer. The wind moved a strand of hair across her cheek. She tucked it behind her ear. Then she picked up the thermos and didn't drink from it. I've been trying to figure out what happened, she said. What happened? This. She made a small gesture between us. I don't know when it became different. Neither did I. Maybe it had been different for months. Maybe I had simply been the last person to notice. She exhaled. I was married for 18 years. I stayed quiet. After it ended, I promised myself I wouldn't become someone who waited around for another person to decide whether I was worth choosing. Her thumb moved slowly along the lid of the thermos. And then you started looking at me like. She stopped. Like what? She shook her head. Never mind. No. She looked at me. I had never seen her look so tired. Like I mattered. The word sat between us. I swallowed. You do. Her eyes closed for a second. That's not what I meant. I know. Silence. A long one. Then she said, You're Daniel's friend. I know. You work for me. You don't work for me. You know what I mean. I nodded. She looked away. And you're younger. There it was. The thing neither of us could make disappear. I know. Does that not bother you? I thought about it. It bothers me that it bothers you. She gave a quiet laugh. That's not an answer. No. I looked at her. It isn't. She finally opened the thermos. The coffee inside had gone cold. She stared at it. Then whispered, I think about you when I shouldn't. I didn't move. I try not to. Her voice cracked slightly. And then you walk into a room and. She stopped again. I waited. She looked at me. I had imagined this moment too many times. In every version, I knew what to say. In the real one, I couldn't find a single sentence. She leaned closer. Not enough to touch. Just enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath. Her eyes dropped to my mouth. Mine did the same. Then she whispered, If I asked you to forget this, could you? I looked at her. And for once, neither of us looked away. Could you? I asked. I didn't answer her question. Not because I didn't know. Because I did. I wanted to tell her I couldn't forget. Instead, I said I don't think I should. She nodded like she'd been expecting that. Then she stood. Good night. And walked away. The next morning, Alina wasn't at work. Neither was her black thermos. At 10:15, I received an email from Human Resources. Her resignation letter was attached. I read it twice. Then a third time. No explanation. Just 6 sentences about gratitude, professional responsibility, and moving forward. I called her. No answer. I sent a message. Can we talk? Delivered. Nothing else. By lunch, Daniel called. Did you know Mom was quitting? No. A pause. She's moving. I sat back in my chair. Moving where? She didn't tell me exactly. That made no sense. Daniel sounded annoyed. She got some offer from a company in another city. Apparently, it's a big promotion. My hand tightened around the phone. When? Soon. How soon? End of the month, I think. I stared through the glass wall of my office. Her desk was empty. There was still a small plant beside her monitor. I had never noticed how much space she occupied until she wasn't there. Did she say why? Daniel laughed without humor. She's my mom, she doesn't exactly give me emotional press releases. I almost smiled. Almost. Then he said, she mentioned you. My chest tightened. What did she say? That you're a good boss. Only that. A good boss. Not the man she'd almost kissed. Not the person she'd been thinking about. Just a good boss. After the call, I walked to her office. I stopped outside. The door was open. Inside, the room looked strangely ordinary. A mug. A stack of folders. A framed photograph of Daniel when he was about 12. And on the corner of her desk, the black thermos. She had forgotten it. Or maybe she'd left it deliberately. I picked it up. It was empty. For some reason, that hurt more than it should have. I carried it to my office and put it in the bottom drawer. For the next 8 days, I stopped going to the places where I might see her. No bookstore. No coffee shop. No Friday dinner at Daniel's apartment. When Daniel asked why, I blamed work. He didn't believe me. One evening, I finally opened our message thread. The last thing she'd written was still there. If I asked you to forget this, could you? My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed. No. Deleted it. Typed. I don't want you to leave. Deleted that too. Then, I think I've loved you longer than I've been willing to admit. I stared at the sentence until the screen dimmed. I didn't send it. Across town, Alina was probably packing. Maybe she was leaving because of me. Maybe she was leaving because she had already decided long before that night on the bench. Maybe those were the same thing. At 11:42, I put on my coat. I stood outside my apartment with her number open on my phone. I could drive to her place. I could knock. I could finally say the thing both of us had spent weeks avoiding. Instead, I locked the door. The message remained unsent. And for the first time, I understood that silence wasn't always restraint. Sometimes it was simply fear wearing better clothes. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life had forgotten to finish the sentence. 3 days before Alina was supposed to leave, Daniel called me. You're coming tonight. I knew better than to ask where. Where? My mom's. I almost said no. Then Daniel added, she's making dinner and she's expecting you. That was enough. When I arrived, Alina opened the door. For a second, neither of us spoke. She looked tired. Not sad. Just tired in the way people look when they've spent too long making decisions alone. Hi, she said. Hi. She stepped aside. Come in. The kitchen smelled like garlic and something burning slightly in the oven. Daniel was in the living room arguing with someone on the phone. Alina glanced toward him. He'll be 20 minutes. You invited me before you knew that. Yes. She turned back to the stove. I stood there awkwardly. You can sit. I can help. You're the CEO. I'm also capable of cutting vegetables. She smiled. Barely. It was the first normal thing she'd said to me in weeks. I took the knife. For a few minutes, we worked beside each other. No explanations. No careful distance. Just chopping vegetables and listening to the oven timer. Then Alina said, "I'm still leaving." I stopped. I know. I accepted the position before we talked on the bench. That changed something. I looked at her. So this wasn't because of me. She shook her head. Not entirely. What's the rest? She put down the spoon. My ex-husband lives there. I didn't say anything. She leaned against the counter. We've been divorced for years. He got sick recently, not dying, nothing dramatic. He just needs help with some things. She looked at the floor. And I realized I'd spent so much time being angry at him that I never figured out what I wanted my life to look like after him. I nodded slowly. So you're going back because of him? No. She looked at me. I'm going because I need to know who I am when I'm not someone's wife, or Daniel's mother, or the woman fighting with the CEO every morning. I smiled faintly. You were very good at fighting with me. I know. She smiled too. Then the smile faded. And that's why I can't stay. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller. I put the knife down. I need to tell you something. She didn't move. I tried not to. I know. I told myself it was because of Daniel, your job, the age difference. She looked at me. And those things matter. Her eyes dropped. But they don't change what happened. Silence. I swallowed. I love being around you. Her face tightened slightly. I love that you remember my coffee. I love that you argue with me when everyone else just agrees. And I hate how empty the office feels when you're not there. She looked away. I don't know what happens after you leave. Neither do I. I don't want to ask you to stay. Good. I laughed softly. She did too. Then she stepped closer. I don't want you waiting for me. I wasn't planning to. She raised an eyebrow. You're a terrible liar. I looked at her. So are you. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she reached for my hand. Not dramatically. Just her fingers finding mine beside the cutting board. She squeezed once. Okay, she whispered. I nodded. Okay. She didn't let go immediately. Neither did I. Alina left 3 days later. There was no airport scene. No running after her car. No promises about forever. She moved to another city, took the new position, and for a while we learned how to talk without pretending nothing had happened. At first it was mostly emails. Then occasional calls. Then messages that had nothing to do with work. A picture of a terrible sandwich. A complaint about the weather. A joke Daniel would have hated. Small things. The kind that didn't need an explanation. 6 months passed. The company changed. So did I. I stopped staying in my office until everyone else had gone home. I started answering texts. Sometimes I even sent the first one. It felt strange at first. Like wearing a shirt that belonged to someone else. Then it became normal. Alina came back for Daniel's birthday. I knew she was coming. I still found myself looking toward the restaurant door at 8:47. She walked in carrying the same black thermos. I laughed before I could stop myself. She saw me. You're still drinking that terrible coffee. You're still carrying that thing. It's practical. You've had it for years. So. I shook my head. She smiled. Nothing dramatic happened. Daniel complained about the restaurant. Someone spilled water. The cake arrived late. It was ordinary. That was probably why it mattered. Later, when everyone else left, Alina and I walked to the bench behind the restaurant. Not the same bench as before. Close enough. She sat down. I stood for a second. You going to sit? I remember what happened last time. She looked up at me. So do I. I sat. There was a comfortable space between us. Not the old careful distance. Just space. She handed me the thermos. Coffee. I took a sip. Cold. I made a face. She laughed. You haven't changed. Neither have you. That isn't true. She was right. Neither of us was the person sitting on that first bench. She had learned how to leave without running away. I had learned that wanting someone didn't mean owning their decision. We talked for almost an hour. About work. Daniel. Her apartment. My terrible cooking. Nothing important. Everything important. When we finally stood, she reached for my hand. This time there was no hesitation. I'm here for 2 weeks, she said. I know. And after that, I'm coming back. I looked at her. Permanently. She nodded. Probably. I smiled. Probably. I don't want to make promises I can't keep. I liked that answer. More than I would have once. The next morning, she walked into my office at exactly 8:47. No knock. She put her black thermos on my desk. Your coffee. I looked at it. Then at her. You remembered. She gave me the smallest smile. Of course I remembered. She turned toward the door. I caught her hand before she could leave. She looked back. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. Some things had become easier to understand without words. The thermos. The bench. The cold tea. The messages we finally stopped deleting. And that strange little space between two people who had once been afraid to cross it. We never became perfect. We just became honest. And somehow that was enough. Maybe love isn't always the person who changes your whole life. Maybe sometimes it's the person who quietly teaches you how to live inside it. And every morning at 8:47 when Alina leaves that black thermos on my desk, I still think about the night she asked me if I could forget. I never answered her then. I don't think I need to now. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?
This isn't just about the budget, it's about the integrity of the whole project. We have to prioritize ethics over profit margin.